her friend, Devin, also. So I'm answering that email, some availabilities. So that's exciting.
Hi. Are we supposed to print it out and turn it in, or submit it on Canvas?
Marianne sent it in an email.
Okay.
I printed hers out. I mentioned I love printing just because I'll probably grade it from printing. But if all you have is you submitted it via email, that's not.
No, I have it. I just couldn't remember.
Okay.
I also looked at your thing that you have on Canvas about what you wanted in it, and I probably did mine rather wrong because I just went at it.
No, and
so
honestly, I don't want you to feel like it is strictly prescribed.
it's hard to, because I don't really remember a lot of that.
And some of that, honestly, I reflect back. Hello there. Hello there. You can spread those chairs apart so you don't feel like you're
I don't want to
so close to Logan. Okay.
This far enough away?
You guys are being silly now. Let's pray. We'll start. Logan was here and saw that I was making a YouTube video with my two crazy daughters. I probably shouldn't have given them candy to sugar them up.
That was going on last night.
Yes.
Oh.
So you probably heard a little bit of the action.
I saw your daughters kick out and go, ah! And
Yeah.
Logan
like,
just told me that story
this is
way over.
Nicholson's daughter.
Yes. So I will pray and then we'll get right into it. I know that the piano learning summary, because we are all so different, and some of us, my husband does not remember as much of his childhood as I do. I am a person who mulls over the past, for the good and for the bad. I like to reflect on what's happened quite a lot. So I think I also like reviewing photos. So I think that sometimes, I don't know if I remember events or if I remember photos, if that makes sense. So, but there will be distinctive things for you, both positively and negatively, that you will remember. And that's the kind of thing that is important for you. And remember, all humans are filled with frailty. And so I've made grave errors in teaching, but I've learned from them. And the sergeant today in chapel mentioned that we need to not fear failure. Failure is not something that will not be a part of a Christian's life or even a teacher's life, but how we deal with that properly and turn that into a good learning experience for you and for your students, whatever age or attention span, whatever. So let's pray and we'll start. Thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for your grace that you've given. I pray that you would help these students as they think about what the great teachers they've had and the experiences they have had. I pray that you would help them to see the importance of the influence that they have. Lord, help us to have a love for the students we teach. Help us to have wisdom and seeing eyes to know how to best help each unique child or adult or middle-aged child. Lord, you are the giver of all good things, and we thank you for that. In your name we pray, amen. All right. So I'm going to read, with Marianne's permission, her piano learning summary, and we'll start with hers. So if you feel like, oh, I'm not sure if I covered what, I wanted to give you an idea of what direction to go, but I'm not going to be belligerent about what I'm looking for. And if you're cringing about sharing it, You do not have to read it out loud, but I thought it would be fun since Marianne is with us via recording that I would read hers. So, Marianne Sanders, when I was 7 years old, my brother started taking piano lessons. We had just found a free acoustic piano in the area and brought it home. I begged my mother to take me for lessons, but she refused, because I was already taking violin lessons at the time. It was not very long after she told me no that I started teaching myself how to play the piano using my brother's piano books. He had the Baldwin beginner set of piano books. I would listen very carefully to what my mother would tell my brother about how to play the piano and which notes were right. I would carefully bide my time until my brother would go outside to play, and then I would sit down at the piano bench, proceeding to redo everything he had already practiced. I taught myself how to read the basic notes and learned the songs in the beginner books that my brother used. I practiced so much that year that my mother decided I should take lessons. Unfortunately, I struggled with my technical skills for years to come because I was so taught. My first piano teacher taught in the basement of her room. She used a keyboard for lessons. My brother and I would go to her house. He always had his lesson first. Lessons with her were stressful, mainly because she always told me that my brother had a much better lesson than I was having. And she said that he was always more prepared than I was for the lessons. I do not remember any skill work or technical skill building. When my mother found out that the teacher had been swearing at us during lessons, when we made mistakes, she immediately removed us from lessons. Okay.
Things not to do.
I can write that down in your notes. My Faith Music Academy future teachers, you are not going to swear at the children, or adults, or anyone. I continued practicing and playing despite not having a teacher to guide me. When I was 11, I went to another piano teacher. She was very nice and very encouraging. She had me in a different series of method books. She made me work on hymn playing almost from the start. She did not give me any scales to practice and no real technical building exercises. She also did not work on theory with me at all. The lessons were in a Lutheran church. There was a piano in a room in the back of the sanctuary. I had lessons with her until I was 13, when I became so frustrated with her unwillingness to give me harder music that I liked. I continued playing on my own, but for no other reason except that I enjoyed it. When I was 15, I auditioned to be a student at Upland Piano Studios. The studio was in the front half of Mrs. Upland's home. There were 2 grand pianos side by side in a huge music library next to them. Mrs. Upland said that I was lacking technical skills, pedal skills, and was slightly behind pianistically for my age. She immediately assigned me scale work, a theory book, a series of easier classical pieces. She also told me that if I did not practice, she would fire me as a student. I was able to catch up, so to speak, relatively quickly due to her excellent teaching. She involved me in piano competitions, piano comprehensive exams, theory exams, and oral exams. Mrs. Eppelman's teaching style was very structured. She organized her lessons to fit each child. She would plan programs for each child showing consideration to each individual personality. The lessons would generally begin with a scale warm-up. We would then start with Baroque, then classical, and so forth. She would assign particular pages that needed extra work or even specific lines. She would make me count aloud while playing and use a metronome. My practice schedule usually included a scale of the day. I would then focus on the parts of the music that I needed most help. I would also play music that needed no practice. I did not have a set time of practice. Sometimes I would practice in the morning and sometimes in the afternoon. I think the most important quality I learned for a piano teacher to have is to be organized and to have a system. Piano teachers also need to know what the end goal musically would be for each student, and to not allow students to slack off on technical and theory work. Okay, so you're going to get a chance to share very interesting. Her experience would be why a class like this has so much value. Do you think that Marianne would have continued if she had not been extremely self-motivated after that first teacher. Probably not. It sounds like the basement of the home that projects how much you value it. I'm not saying if you have to use your basement, but it shouldn't seem like a secondary place in your home. Did you know Mrs. Evelyn, 2 pianos, music library, the front of her home? What does that say immediately as you enter for an interview? How much does that person value what they're doing? A lot. So I'm not saying you have to buy a certain home and it's right out the front door and it's on the first, but you do need to think of what will this environment say to my student? Of how who I am as a teacher, how much I value what we're doing, and obviously your parents. If you are ever, I had a student, my child took with a student that was a Russian teacher, and she would say that was garbage, just garbage. Were you even trying? And I have a pretty strong daughter, and she'd leave lessons. She wouldn't cry in the lessons, just cry and cry. And I thought, I don't know that we had a schedule conflict as well. And rather than working hard to iron out the schedule conflict, we ceased having lessons. We do not know the power of our words that we use either to encourage a child or to really frustrate. And so anyway, very cool. What I'd like to do is post these for future reference of pedagogy students, that they might be able to read yours and learn from that. I think there's a lot to be gained from that. Maybe that wasn't your experience, but I thought that was funny, interesting, and hopefully you can learn from that. Does anybody else want to share theirs? You don't have to read it. You can maybe share the highlights or lowlights or whatever you would like. I'll share just a little bit about my own experience. I started when I was in first grade, and my grandparents had a commitment. They loved music, and they paid for all 19 of their grandchildren to have private lessons. So they never bought us cool birthday gifts. I got underwear at Christmas. I mean, just what they really valued. And now that I'm an adult, I understand what a gift that was and what a legacy. I have in my family probably about 4 music teachers of the 19. So not all of us, of course. Now all of us serve in our local churches with music in some way, whether it's singing, choir, playing an instrument, or whatever. Do you think that has lasting value? Oh, an incredible value. Not just the discipline that's required of having a routine of practicing. Do you think that that flows into studying for other subject matters? I guarantee it. So anybody else would like to share? I didn't share my whole story. I just kind of gave you a little window into that.
I can.
Go, Anna. Let's hear Anna Smith from Ohio.
One of my earliest memories, actually, we grew up. Words just aren't coming out.
That's okay.
I grew up mostly in the same house. We moved on my 3rd birthday.
Okay.
And so everything that I remember from the old house, I know I was like only 1 or 2. And I know one of my earliest memories, my mom taught piano lessons when I was growing up. And I remember sitting on our stairs, peeking around the corner, watching piano lessons, listening to it. There's also a really cute picture of me like playing the piano. I'm like playing with this finger or something on the keyboard when I was like 2.
Aww.
So she taught piano lessons when I was growing up, and I remember hearing them and really wanting to play the piano. And obviously my church is very musical. I have a lot of musical influences that way. And my mom.
First Baptist Church of Delirium, right?
Yep. And my mom studied music in college. She was a music teacher at the school and did piano lessons, so I grew up with that influence. And I remember just begging and begging to start piano lessons, and she wouldn't let me start when I was really little. She wanted to wait until I was a little older. I think I was around 5 or 6 when I really officially started. I don't remember I can picture the very first book that I played out of, like what the song was. There was a song about the Sandman. I remember, yeah. So I remember that. It was, just like a basic, like CDE, EDC sort of thing. And then at some point, I started playing out of the Bastion piano course. The pink books, I remember I had the primer first and then moved. I don't really remember a lot of theory when I was really young. I remember doing a listening exercise where I sat in our dining room and my mom played the piano in the living room. And I remember the picture. It was like a toucan sitting in a palm tree, and I think there was a monkey on the ground. And if the note was like high up on the keyboard, I had to color in the toucan, and if it was low on the keyboard, I had to color the monkey. That's just like a random, very vivid memory that I have of doing that.
If you don't have explicit memories like that, it's okay.
No, that's one of the very few things I specifically remember. But let's see. We always had piano lessons in our living room.
So not the basement.
No, not the basement. Not the basement. My mom had a really nice weighted keyboard that we had. And let's see. I think my goal was usually to practice 30 minutes a day. I didn't really have a strict practice schedule. Probably should have, but I didn't. But that was kind of her general standard, was try and get 30 minutes a day. I don't really remember a lot about the format of the lessons. It was kind of just sit down and play through your pieces and talk about them. By the time I was in late middle school, I had worked my way through, I think it's like the primer course, and then I think there are 4 levels of the Bastion course. So I'd worked my way mostly through those, and my piano lessons had kind of devolved from like a piano lesson to me playing it in the living room and mom from the kitchen, yeah, that's good, go on to the next one. So I wasn't really getting a lot, and I was getting a little more advanced moving into junior high school. So my mom had been planning for a number of years and decided it was time for me to start taking with a lady from our church. So I took with Mrs. Judy Davis. She's a pianist at our church and is a very skilled church pianist. And she would be the first person to tell you she's not as skilled classically. She hasn't done as much of that, but she's very, very good. So that was, I think 7th grade was when I started with her. And
you came to faith at 17, correct?
I did. So 7th grade was when I first started, and I did I think it was like a couple years in there after that I did level 4 and 5 of the Michael Aaron piano course.
Okay.
I remember it's a pink book with a music note on the front, and it's like that. So
I have a lot of books. I don't know that I remember Michael. Although a lady just came by, Diane Smith, donated a lot of stuff. I'm still going through it. Lovely lady, taught 57 years. She's still teaching a little bit. But she said something I thought was really profound, that a great teacher can use any books and be a great teacher. A terrible teacher can use any set of books and be a terrible teacher. So yes, I do want you to be aware of the greatest materials and the finest things available and utilize them, yes. But remember, your student may not resonate with what the book just said, and they may not get it. So you need to be inventive and creative and have blessedness to be able to adjust to that. Maybe they didn't quite get the concept yet. Don't move on. I'm always tempted because like you just feel this propensity that you have to turn the page. Well, is there another activity you could do to reinforce that or create? So, anyway, sorry to kind of interject there, but that from Diane Smith I thought was very, very true. And there are so many methods. I mean, we're going to hear Dr. Lancaster talk about how great Alfred's stuff is. I've told you Faber's great. There's things that I've pulled out here that are good. Remember, it's the person who stewards whatever you use. Because honestly, there's some good music in all of the books, and good pedagogy there, but it's you that's going to either make it great or not so great. So anyway, continue.
So anyway, I started doing that. It was also around that time I started learning and playing offertories in church. I remember my first one, and it was fun because I made up my own ending, like a little bit. I changed the ending. I didn't like it. That was, I guess that's kind of my first foray into arranging was when I did that. In junior high and high school, most of the driving force behind my progress in piano was Towns for Christ, because that was kind of my church. We had it at my church, you know, so it was a big deal. They really encouraged us to do it. And I had grown up, like my parents judged in TFC, and so I remember seeing it in middle school and wanting to participate. So that was kind of the main thing that drove me to keep trying to learn harder and harder pieces. And the first real classical piece I ever remember really playing was Debussy's Clair de Lune, and I learned it for TFC. And that was the first time I had heard the piece and loved it, and it wasn't in my lesson book, you know, it wasn't a piece that was in the book, it was I want to learn this classical piece. So that was for TFC.
So for you, a little bit interesting, a parallel here. She got her plugged in with competition and other structured events. I think that when you do have a middle school child, you need to start kind of branching out from just having a recital a year, or not saying that every kid likes it. Some kids, you mentioned, do you want to be in a competition? They're like horrified. But it's an opportunity to have another motivating atmosphere. So the Talents for Christ, or for her, it was the music, Minnesota Music Teachers Association has tons of keyboard exams. I've practiced some of the exams. They're really, really terrific. Like there's theory, music history, and performance of all different eras. And so a really great experience. And it's not a competition in that you're going to get first place and a place, but you get like a rating. You pass out of level 8 and you move on to level 9. And then level 9 has particular, behind you somewhere over there, I have all the pieces that you can play at different levels and what's required for your technique. So she was required to, all right, you're going to be ready for all of the major arpeggios at level 8 or whatever. And then level 10, it would be all of the diminished chord arpeggios or whatever. So, keep going. I'm sorry.
During junior high and early high school, that was also when I had my first experience accompanying. Because I was blessed to grow up in a fairly large musical church. I never really needed to learn how to do that because there were lots of other skilled pianists in our church that could do that. So when Mrs. Davis found out that there was a Sunday school class that needed a pianist, she asked me to do it, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that. But she strongly encouraged me, and my mom strongly encouraged me, so I did it. And I would go in. I think it was, what grade was it? It would have been I think it was somewhere between first and third grade Sunday school class, and I would go and play usually Obedience and Family of God were the two core pieces that we sang a lot.
So those are your down home ready pieces.
Play that. And occasionally a couple, in total there were maybe 8 songs that I would play for the class, if that. But so I did that for a couple years. And definitely did not make me an expert accompanist, but it was my first experience doing it, and it was a big deal.
Your first piano lessons, you think you're not going to be an expert yet. I'm still not an expert. There's growth day by day that you will see. So keep going.
Before I moved on to college, I did decide to perform a senior recital. Growing up, I had never participated in any recitals. Mom never organized any, and at the time, Mrs. Davis didn't do recitals really either. I think actually since then she's done a couple, but hadn't at the time. And I heard my mom talk about it, and I knew about the concept, and it was, I had a friend or two that had done one too. And so it was an experience I wanted to have, and I think it was a good exercise to prepare a longer program instead of just here's a random piece here and there or a couple pieces for TFC. It was a whole big program, and it also helped me prepare me for my audition to college.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it.
Anybody else? Allison, you look like you're chomping at the bit. Ah, let's hear it. Bring it.
So when I was 7 years old, my family visited a friend's house, and they had a piano, and their daughter was taking lessons at the time. I think she was a little bit farther ahead, but they still had a couple of beginner piano books. And I remember sitting at the piano and trying to teach myself to play. And then when we went home from their house, the family let me take home one of their lesson books, and I kept trying to learn it on my own. So my parents didn't want me to start it on it right away in case it was just something that I was randomly interested in. Yeah, I think I was like 7 or something. Because all the kids just go in phases. They're like, oh, I like that. I want to do that. I want to do that. So like, let's give it time. Except for I kept trying to teach myself. So they're like, okay, we'll sign her up for lessons. My first teacher was Mrs. Price. She mostly taught younger kids, so she had a lot of experience teaching beginners. She always seemed excited to see me and would ask how I was doing. We went to her house for lessons, which is like 10 minutes from our house. And I like going to her house because I got to play with her cat while my sister had her lesson.
Oh, so you weren't allergic, okay?
Nope. But I would just like go into the other room and just sit and pet her cat.
Oh. Was it that front room?
Yeah, it was the front living room. Like you just go in and straight to the right.
Great setup.
We usually had lessons in the morning because we were homeschooled, so we could just go while the other kids were in school. And we did once a week during the school year, and then in the summer we did every other week.
Oh, that's an interesting model.
I don't know if she did like switched it off with different kids, so she had fewer per week, or if she did like her lessons a week and then had a week off. I don't know how she structured it, but I just know we went every other week. So it wasn't all the time, but it was kind of a break. She had one upright piano that we used for lessons, and then a grand piano that I sometimes got to play on when I was practicing for my recitals, which is probably where I fell in love with grand piano. So it was like a really special thing to play the grand piano.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I left that. I remember I had my lessons with Mrs. Davis at first at our house, but then we moved to have them at the church, mostly because then I could prepare for offertories, and TFC was even on that piano. And I remember like the first time I'm like, am I allowed to play this? This is so incredible.
I mean, I remember when my teacher, her husband bought her a beautiful Kawhi grand piano, and we all had to play. And I mean, it was so fun, like always walking in and getting to play and knowing that how much it meant to her to have this new piano and wanting to take such good care of it and not scratch it. So go on, that's a cool, I think that's an interesting. I would kick my students off my grand piano onto the digital piano if they were abusing it. Like, okay, you've just been putting pencils and post-its. We're moving over to the digital piano. If you can't treat it nice, it doesn't want to have you at it. Let's move. So I move them over to the digital piano, which it did have weighted keys, but it was not nearly as cool as the grand piano. So I did have one boy, a little Bennett boy, that had many times had to be demoted to the digital. That's it. Go on.
So we did a lot of off the bench activities. I remember. I just remember like sitting on the floor, and she'd have this box of rhythmic instruments. They were like drums and maracas or boomsticks, and she let us pick out which one we wanted. And then we did like different rhythm games. So she'd like do a rhythm, and then we would copy it, or she had like cards with different rhythms that we would do. It was really fun. That was like one of my favorite things.
And honestly, it's really musical experiences. Cool.
We just sat on the carpet.
Learn and grow from Allison's teacher. Definitely. You remember it and how positive that was. You will feel sometimes like, this is so dumb. This is so ridiculous. I don't think I'm accomplishing anything. People are paying me to do this. This seems totally redundant. Yesterday, I felt like it was like an overwhelming 25 minutes for me with my two kids. Ideally, I think I'm going to separate and do videos just with the one who's 5, almost 6, and the one that's 8. That age disparity, too much. But anywho, They left in the car. That was so fun. I was just like
Exhausting.
But they left thinking, wow, I want to do that again. Did I have a win? Now, when you watch the video, you're going to see it's like, but they are learning, and I have more opportunities for learning because of the positive experience. So keep going, Allison. Sorry.
So we use Saber method
Mm,
books. And we use like lesson books and then technique and artistry and theory books.
Mhm.
And I always forgot to do my theory book until we were in the car driving for a lesson. So sometimes I would tell my sister to go first so I can finish my theory homework. Did not like theory very much then. And then whenever we finished our pieces, we get one sticker to put on our page that we finished on the song and one sticker to put on our music folder, which I still have, and it's still covered in stickers. This is probably why I still like stickers.
Yeah, that makes you feel really accomplished.
I had a whole folder and I was like filled with stickers.
Yeah, Lily's teacher, violin teacher, does that. And they also get a ribbon on their violin, like a black belt, red. And I think for piano, I'm always looking for creative things. So maybe putting on, if you did like, it's a year of the Olympics, get cheap little bronze and just, it's silly, but you still remember it. And do you think that motivated you to want to pass your pieces? To get a sticker?
Interesting. I think it depends on the kid though.
Yeah, that totally
Because like for me, it would have bothered me to have stickers in my books. It even bothered me sometimes when like my teachers would write on them or
Do you have OCD?
No, but it was like I liked it like
Sorry
looking neat and pristine, like the sticker messed it up. But I would have liked to stick a sticker somewhere else. So like on your folder or something like that, I would have liked that. But like even now, I'm like I wouldn't like it because it didn't.
Do you write in a textbook ever? Or highlight?
I do.
Okay.
I do that.
Interesting.
But I don't know, just something about like, and I've seen like used ones too, and it just bothers me because it doesn't look new and pristine anymore, and it just I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
To each his own, and I had a student that didn't want me to write anything. Joshua Bennett was a student who he said, "I don't want you to write in mine." It's like, perfect. I have a spare copy. I'm gonna write all over mine because I love to write, and so yours will stay clean. But I want you to see all of what I'm writing.
And I don't know, for me, it was something like I remember one time my teacher like wrote in my book and it bothered me because it was like in pen and it's there forever. And I like a copy, write all over a copy, but something about like the original book, I wanted that to stay neat. And I'm still that way a little bit about some things. So.
Well, Allison.
So that's like no, but I'm saying like you have to consider because some kids that doesn't mean you should make a blanket statement. I'm saying like diversity.
You are going to find
diversity and stickers.
If you watch the video, I would say my almost 6-year-old had a better attention span than my most 8-year-olds. Or she just turned 8. I mean, as I reflected on it, I was like, wow, really, it seemed more attentive. Now, that could be for a variety of reasons. And so don't put a child in a little box. Because you might have an 8-year-old that you're going to have to be like, all over the place to keep them engaged. And then you might have a 6-year-old that can sit there for a longer time. You just do not know. So just be sensitive, pay attention. And in the interview, you need to ask, so what kinds of things really motivate you? And ask the parents, like, if you want them to clean your room, what kind of rewards do they really like? So I had one student, Matisse Bednar, a really sweet girl. Matisse. She was having trouble with being motivated to practice. And I said, honey, what would be a motivating reward? If you practice for 6 months, what would mean a lot to you? She said, I want my mom to take me to the Mall of America for the day. And I said, you know what? I'm going to call your mom and see if she's okay with that. So I called her up. She's like, absolutely. If she'll practice for 6 months, I'll take her to the Mall of America. And so that little young lady practiced very faithfully for that entire 6-month period. I called mom and just said, hey, great news. Your daughter's been doing so well. So you need to follow through on that opportunity for her to go to mall. So they went on a date. She took the day off work. So pay attention. Every child is different. Some kids could care less about them all, and that's not what would be meaningful to them. I read the 5 Love Languages book this summer, and I'm not saying that everything in there is like gospel, but there are some principles that I've taken away that in the interview, pay attention to the way they respond to words of affirmation. Sometimes my Olivia, if you just like pat her on the back when she's a little bit too riled up, then that calms her down. She can focus again. Or maybe another child, a little gift, having a prize box will mean the world to them. Other kids don't really care about that. You just have to be kind of paying attention when you see a child light up for a particular sticker or prize, or when you give them a high five even. If their love language is physical touch, I mean, that can be pretty incredible. So, Allison, keep going. How are we doing? We're doing okay. I want to make sure all of you get to share. Keep going. This time we're not going to weigh in, myself included, okay?
Yeah, so we usually did our lesson books, but then sometimes Price gave us a special piece to play that wasn't in the book. And then as I grew up older, the extra pieces were often duets that I played with my sister. Just super fun. And she also had a notebook that she would write in all the stuff that we practiced, like scales, and then this book we need to do this, and this book we need to do that. So that's helpful. I don't remember too much about my practice routine. I don't think my mom like had to nag me to practice because I liked it so much. Except I didn't like playing scales, but Mrs. Price made me practice scales in our pet shows still. We did recitals a few times a year, and I actually really liked them and didn't dread them, even though I still get nervous. I think it's because I like wearing a fancy dress and playing my pieces I've been practicing. Anna likes that. I usually play at least one solo, and then I'd play like one duet with my dad or my sister. It was really fun. We usually had recitals in a room in our church, so like you taught at our home, but then we had recitals in a room at church. Although I remember, I just like have this random memory of one mini recital she had in her home, which is right before Christmas. She had all the students, it was just students, there were no parents, come to her home, and we like did a mini recital for each other and played our pieces, and she even had a program and stuff. And then afterwards we did Christmas crafts and had treats.
Oh, what a Christmas piano party.
Yeah.
I've done one of those. It was a summer piano party. So totally different season. My husband was an assistant pastor. Christmas was a very stressful time of year because, you know, our church events very full. So adding another thing on the calendar was not something we wanted, but really cool. I think it sounds like you have a really lovely teacher.
I like her. She also gave me Christmas presents every year.
Oh,
And
she gave you presents?
I think we gave her presents too, but I still have like little music ornaments that she gave me and my sisters. We still have them at our tree every year. They're just like little music ornaments.
That's good to hear. I'm not a crier, but that's sweet.
I like them. And then when I was 11 years old, she moved to Canada.
That is devastating.
Like literally my favorite teacher.
Oh.
So she like suggested piano teachers that we could transfer to, and we tried one of them, except we didn't really like him very much because he tried to teach me jazz, and I was like, what is this? How long is this right now? So I just kept practicing my own. And then when I was 13, I started taking from a lady at my church. And we just did a little bit, like worked through the method books, but I didn't remember learning very much because it was like, okay, learn the notes. Okay, you learn the song. Okay, next one. And then we kept going through.
So it was a
helpful.
totally different experience.
Yeah. So I only did that for like a year or so, and then I was like, okay, nope. And then I just kept teaching myself. It's kind of a theme. That's why Mary Ann sounded like me. Try to teach her, teach yourself. Try to teach her, teach yourself. And it just kind of went back and forth.
But you did have a solid teacher, and so did she.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then somewhere in there, started cello lessons. So that was fun. Also, I didn't add this in here, but it was around this time. Actually, it was like right at the end of Mrs. Price because she introduced it to us. There's this thing in Elgin, like near it's like northern Chicago. They do it at Elgin College. They do it every year. I think they're still doing it. They've been doing it for a long time. And it's called American Grants. And it's basically this big program they do in January or February, I think. And like basically anybody can do it, from like the little kids all the way up to like the piano teachers. There's 12 pianos on the stage and one conductor. And they like give the pieces to the kids or the piano teachers like months ahead of time. They practice them through those months, and then like they'll have maybe 2 or 3 rehearsals. I forget, maybe 2 up there, and then 1 more on stage, like right before the performance. And so we practice all of our pieces for the few months, and then you go there and we'd play the piece, and they were all duets. So you play this duet with 23 other kids on stage at the same time on the 12 grand pianos. And so we find, and like everyone dressed up super fancy for the actual performance. So we'd go there and like have an actual performance. They'd start with the little kids and play these super cute like duets that are like use 3 notes the whole time, and then they like keep moving up the levels, and eventually it was like the Stars and Stripes Forever was the last one they always did, and the teachers and the super good people would, like get to play it. So much fun because you're like on stage in a performance, but you're like playing your little duets that you've been practicing for months, and so cool. I love it.
Really
We used
cool.
to do that on the harp, like so like it'd be like the same thing in Colorado, like all the harpists in Colorado would get together and they call it harp fantage, and it was like the same thing with little kids for like super old ones, and then we ended on like a piece that everyone could play together, and it's like 50 harps on the stage, and it's really fun.
Okay,
Super fun.
so what I think we're gonna do, we have time for one more person to share, and then we'll save the other person for Monday. So who would like to be our next contestant on the piano learning summary share? This is our think, pair, share.
I can go if you want.
I don't really care who goes. So.
All right, Logan.
I actually have had some struggles trying to remember exactly some of the details. There were some random things which were weird because they're not about the piano. Like my piano teacher, she had her dad or her husband was a retired pastor.
Aww.
So I got to talk with him a lot, and also in their basement they had a pool table, and I'd practice on that when my little sister would be practicing because we both took lessons.
Oh, cute.
Like play around. But anyways, when I first started out, my mom, well, first of all, my whole family is like, they really like music. They'd sing at churches, at church, not at churches. But so I would hear music a lot. I'd get it from my siblings, would actually be playing piano because they were taking lessons.
Okay.
So I'd see their music, and I'd kind of be like, I don't know, I didn't really know much about it yet. But then my mom eventually started showing me some of the basics, like kind of like, this is what a note looks like. And she showed me some of the things like that. Not too much into detail. But then through
Were you
that,
pretty small at that time?
yeah, I don't remember how old I was. I'm pretty sure I was probably 5, maybe
but
6.
a little person.
So I was a little person. But with that, it kind of sparked an interest to find out more. And I remember there were a few times where I just sit down at the piano and like kind of go through my siblings' books, trying to figure out things on my own. Because she told me, like, my mom would tell me what certain notes would do, but she didn't get into like why they would do it.
Sure.
Kind of thing. So like I figured out like, you know, how 8 notes work, because at first I thought they were longer than whole notes, and I was like, but that doesn't make sense. But it was fun just trying to figure it out by myself. And when my mom noticed it, she wanted to give me lessons. That's what my older siblings were doing, but their teacher was retiring, so she had to find a new teacher.
Sorry for coughing.
And we were kind of like at a loss for what to do. So my mom she asked a lot of friends about different teachers that they could find, and maybe some teachers that they were taking. So I ended up going to the same teacher that the Shepherds actually went to. So Lindy Shepherd took lessons from my same teacher, and she was really a really good teacher. Like, she'd cover a lot of things. It wasn't like I wouldn't be getting 30 lessons, but those were hard. She had me do scales at a pretty early age, and it was it was rough. That was the hardest part. Like, why do I have to do this? You never know why.
Mhm.
But yeah, the stickers were a big thing. I was kind of like I don't like it when she wrote in my book, but I did leave. I did like the stickers. I like those stickers. But her name was Mrs. Sheldrick, and she would. Like I said, I don't remember exact details of how things kind of went, but I was going through the what's it called, Piano Adventures book.
Okay, the favorite
So I went
piano
through that.
adventures.
I went through that series. I don't remember where I started, but I know I didn't start at the beginning because of how much I taught myself.
Okay.
She thought that it would be better if I didn't start, especially with
Okay.
the beginning things. I started it when I was 10,
Okay.
so there was a while when I was just teaching myself.
Sure.
I don't remember very much what went down.
Sure. No, and that's okay.
But yeah, so I took lessons for her for a very long time. She only had me do about a half an hour per day, but that eventually grew to be an hour per day. Since I was homeschooled, I didn't really have a set time that I practiced. It was pretty much whenever I wanted to, just as long as I practiced. Which sometimes I did. Sometimes I'd miss, but then I wouldn't get a sticker on the practice sheet. Which would be, listed. She'd actually write down all the things that I should practice. It wasn't like, yeah, that helped me a lot because I would forget. But with the piano adventure books, I'd be doing like one page in each of the books,
Okay.
kind of like progressing through them. Sometimes I finish like the lesson book before I got done with anything else,
Okay.
but stuff like that. She also let me pick a song out later on, not at first, but she let me pick a song out, and it was pretty fun. Like I kind of like she'd show me songs that she had if I wanted to learn them, and that included like hymn arrangements too.
Ooh.
I didn't get started on hymn playing until my pastor asked me to play in church, and I'm like, I need to know how to do this. And it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. I was 15, I think, when that happened.
Okay.
And I remember that's one of the few things I remember. I was practicing. This is the first time I was going to play at church. I was practicing in the auditorium, and my pastor was in the kind of like fellowship hall right outside. And there's a door in the back, which is right next to the piano. So I'm practicing my piano, what I'm going to do. It was Christmas time, so I was doing God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. And he just barged in and was like, you should play for church. And I was like, okay. But it was nice because they had an electric piano, which I turned down really low. It was very hard for me to build up confidence. Because it was low, I kind of like keeping it low,
Sure.
And it wasn't until I was a lot older than I actually started turning it up. But so it didn't seem like I was doing much, but it actually helped me a lot to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And once I learned how to do it, I eventually started turning up. I don't think I put in the paper, but
No, that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes even hearing other people talk about what they experience, it does awaken some other ideas that you experience. Like you said, most of the time, if you say you're a pianist or they hear you play an offertory, their assumption is you can do everything.
yeah.
As a pianist.
Just like that.
Just you need to be aware of that assumption. It's there. My dad would be like, "You playing really well. I put you on the schedule Sunday night." Oops. I started very, very low. But it was so good to like learn to follow the patterns, to listen to what Jeannie Martin was playing as the introduction, and listening and thinking, oh wow, Irene's introduction are not as good as Jeannie's. Why are Jeannie's better? And like thinking through those, like, wow, that one really helped me to prepare for singing. Oh, that one was strange. But I got to really mull it over where I'm not the one having to present yet. I just get to observe and watch and think that worked really well. What did she do? I'm going to copy her when it's my turn. So anyway, we have 1 minute, but Sarah, you're up to bat on Monday, so just be prepared. Something that I love to see that there is a commonality. All of you had performance opportunities. All of you, sounds like. Some of them were very fancy, but then also informal, like piano party. Brilliant idea for that teacher to have a brother sister sister duet. You should be doing that. And the competitions for some kids are very motivating. Getting involved in church ministry. So if you have a student in your church, as they're getting to be Logan's age or a little bit into the teen years, plugging them into playing for Sunday school or saying, hey, can you be like my wingman? And I want you to always play on second piano. I don't care if it's like so quiet in the room. I want you to start doing it, just so you can experience it. Diane's first piano lessons, her piano teacher told her, I'm going to have you teach some students for me, but I'm going to sit there and I'm going to watch you and I'm going to teach you how to do it. Very interesting. So anyway, method's not essential, but the teacher really does matter and how they convey to you the value meaning. So it is time to go. So farewell to, I want all of your papers. Yes, I do. That would be lovely.
And I can email you my revisions later.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was kind of last minute for me.